All right, let's dive in. Today, we're basically chasing a historical ghost. We're looking for a hidden connection between two worlds that are separated by 1,000 years, not to mention the rise of two completely different religions. It's a puzzle that might just rewrite what we think we know about how ideas actually survive.
So our whole investigation really starts with this question. On one side of the puzzle, you've got a Roman legionary, let's say in the 3rd century. He's stationed out on the dusty edge of the empire, and he's part of this tough, all-male military cult. And then, on the complete other side, 1,000 years later, you have a master craftsman in some bustling city in Anatolia. He's a member of a mystical Islamic brotherhood, and he's bound by this incredibly strict code of ethics and chivalry. I mean, what could these two guys possibly have in common? Well, the answer, and this is where some incredible historical detective work comes in, might just be a kind of hidden continuity. Think of it like a subterranean river of ritual and structure that flowed completely unseen right beneath the surface of history, connecting these two incredibly distant worlds. Okay, so to follow this river, we've got to get to know the two people standing on its banks. Let's start with our Roman soldier and the god that he worshipped. So he was a follower of Mithraism. Now, this was not your standard state religion. It was a mystery cult, exclusive to men, and it was wildly popular with the Roman army. Its central image, the one you see everywhere, is the god Mithras, a figure of light and truth, in the heroic act of slaying a sacred bull. And definitely remember that bull, because it's important. And our craftsman? He was part of the Futuwwa, or the Ahi brotherhoods. These were really incredible organizations that managed to blend Sufi mysticism, a knightly code of honor, and the practical structure of a trade guild all into one. And they were led by this respected elder known as the Ahi Baba, which literally means Father Ahi. So, how on earth do we connect a bull-slaying cult with an Islamic guild? Well, the answer isn't in their gods, but in their blueprints. We need to look right past the theology and check out the actual structure of the organizations themselves. Let's start by going inside a Mithraic temple. See, Mithraism had this really clear ladder-like structure. You didn't just join, you had to ascend through 7 distinct degrees, each with its own symbols and trials. You'd start out as a raven, and you could climb all the way to the top, to Pater, which just means father, the leader of that whole community. And get this, 2 rituals were absolutely central to this brotherhood. First, the handshake. Members actually called themselves Syndic, those united by the handshake. Now, this wasn't just some casual greeting, it was a sacramental pact. And second was the Cingulum, or the military belt, which an initiate at the soldier level would wear to signify his commitment and service. Okay, so we've got a structure, but here is the big problem. Mithraism basically vanishes in the 4th and 5th centuries when the Roman Empire goes Christian. The Ahi guilds, though, they don't really show up until the 12th century. That's a gap of over 700 years. So, how do we build a bridge across that massive chasm in time? This is where the detective work gets really fascinating. The bridge might just be a group called the Mithraia. Now, the 10th century Arab historian Ibn al-Nadim wrote about this Manichaean sect in Iraq, and their name literally means followers of Mir, the Persian name for Mithra. And they were active right up to the period when the Futuwwa started to get organized. They kept the name and the reverence alive. And, this wasn't just some fringe thing. The cultural memory was really strong. The Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad, the very heart of the Islamic world, were still celebrating Murhajan, the ancient Persian festival of Mithra, centuries after the last Mithraic temple in Rome had shut its doors for good. The name and the idea, it never truly went away. So, we have a possible bridge. The name and the cultural memory survived, so now we can finally do it. We can compare the blueprints of the Roman cult and the Islamic guild side by side and see just how deep this connection really goes. And when you do, wow, the parallels are just stunning. Okay, look at the leader. In Mithraism, he's the pater, or father. In the Ahi guilds, the Ahi Baba, also father. The Mithraic handshake pact has its twin in the Musafaha oath. The Roman soldier's belt becomes the craftsman's ceremonial sash. Even the ritual banquet is echoed in the communal meal. I mean, the structures aren't just similar, they're almost identical. And look, this wasn't lost on modern scholars either. The great French academic Henry Corbin was absolutely convinced of the connection. He argued that the Futuwwa initiation wasn't some new invention, but, and I quote, a resurrection of the spirit of ancient Iranian military initiations.
But the most stunning piece of evidence, maybe the smoking gun, might not be in a text or ritual. It might be in a building. There's a living tradition in Iran that could be the architectural ghost of a Mithraic temple.
Let me introduce you to the Zurkhaneh, the House of Strength. It's a kind of sacred gymnasium where athletes train in a tradition that blends physical power with spiritual chivalry. And its design raises an incredible question. Could this be a Mithraeum in disguise? The similarities are jaw-dropping. Just like the Mithraeum was often built to look like a cave, the Zurkhaneh is frequently semi-underground. They both have a sunken central area where all the main action takes place. The athletes in the Zurkhaneh train with these heavy clubs that look remarkably like the mace Mithras sometimes carried, and the whole ethos is identical, a brotherhood dedicated to strength and truth led by a master.
So what does all this add up to? Well, it's not as simple as saying Mithraism just put on a new hat and became an Islamic guild. No, the truth is more subtle and, honestly, a lot more interesting.
The crucial idea here is not direct inheritance. It's more like a subterranean metamorphosis. The theology, the whole story of Mithras and the bull, that faded away. But the structure, the social DNA of the organization itself, that went underground. That hidden river of tradition carried the essential forms forward. The hierarchy, the sacred pacts, the initiations, that ideal of a spiritual brotherhood. It flowed through groups like the Mithra. It mixed with local Persian warrior traditions. And then, when the social conditions were right centuries later, it popped back up, clothing itself in the language and values of Sufi Islam. And that brings us right back to our two men. The Ahi master craftsman, tying that ceremonial shed sash around the waist of a young apprentice, is performing an act that is a distant echo, a spiritual inheritance from the Roman soldier who was once girded with his military cingulum belt on that very same Syrian frontier. It's just a powerful reminder that history is not always about clean breaks and brand new beginnings. Sometimes the oldest rivers are the ones that flow the deepest. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other ancient forms, what other hidden structures are still alive today, flowing just beneath the surface of our own world?